Welcome back. As you may or may not know, I'm known as Eli the Computer Guy, and as I'm sure you do know, this is Roxy the Chihuahua. Little Roxy decided to come to work today. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Some YouTubers, they have certain attributes that people like to look at. I don't have any of those attributes, but I do have a Chihuahua. I do have a Chihuahua. Come for the Chihuahua. Stay for the advice on getting ahead in your tech career. Anyways, how are you all doing today? My current project, if you don't know, is something called silicondojo.com. Basically, the idea is what if high quality technology education was simply as available as water? We have self-study programs on silicondojo.com. We have Introduction to Python. We have SQL. We have something called the Bottle Web App Framework. I'm currently working on a program for Introduction to Programming. We do one-on-one conversations every Monday between 1 to 5 p.m. And we do group Zoom things. Yesterday, we had Martin Lehner on. So we had Martin. He's the CEO of an MSP up in the Yukon Territory of Canada. He has 3 locations, and he talked about what it's like to actually run a managed service provider up in Canada. And gave you all the real advice. He also said what his opinions were of cybersecurity degrees. And I've got to say, you think I'm mean? You think I'm brutal? You think I'm brutal? Holy crap. He made me seem nice. I was like, yeah, so Martin, when you're hiring, if somebody comes and has a cybersecurity degree, what do you think about that? What do you do? And he literally stated, if you have nothing other than a cybersecurity degree, it goes directly in the trash can. I didn't say it. The guy with 3 locations and employees said it. So anyways, one of those things to be considering. And that's what I try to bring to you folks. Again, I'm not trying to sugarcoat things too much. I'm not trying to shine the turd too much with actually being in the tech world. And I don't have sponsors, right? There's no Dell sponsorship or any other kind of sponsorship here. So I can try to give you the real world of what our industry is like. And by giving the real world of what our industry is like, I bring people on the show to tell you that your cybersecurity bachelor's degree is going directly in the trash can. Anywho, but we did that yesterday. Next week, we're going to have Steve Newman on. He's the head of business development for an internet service provider. Because one of the things I've noticed is you folks don't seem to understand a lot about business development either. So I'm going to start having more business development people. But we're going to be doing that like every week. And that's one of the things I'm really trying to do with silicondojo.com. Again, it's Silicon Dojo. The idea is getting on the mat. It's actually using this, right? Other people sit there and they watch YouTube videos about fighting, right? That's always funny. You'll hear people talk about fighting or whatever, and they watch YouTube videos, or they'll just wax lyrically about Bruce Lee or whatever, or they'll tell you why Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best. Okay, fine. It's been a little while, but I feel pretty good. Why don't we get on the mat? What? Well, I mean, you know everything about fighting and all that, and it's been a little while. I'd like to loosen up some, so why don't we get on the mat and see what you know? Right? Anyways, that's one of the things with Silicon Dojo is the idea is this isn't about, making you feel better. This isn't about, how things should be. It's the way the world actually is. Anyways, so with that, let's go over the question I want to talk about today is, should you become an IT manager? And I thought this was a very interesting question, and it goes over a lot of the stuff that I talk about, and one of the big issues with the isms in the modern world. And again, how we should all be treating everybody better. Hey, what if we treated everybody like they're human? We could do that. We could do that. Anyway, so this was an interesting question that came up because, and I've had this conversation quite a bit with a number of different students. And so this person has been in the tech world for 16 years. So they have a bachelor's degree. They've been in the tech world for 16 years. And as far as I can tell, they have good, solid technical experience. May not be the best, right? They're not rock stars or anything, but it's also not 16 years of help desk experience. Right, they've been a team lead, they've worked on large projects, the whole 9 yards. And one of the things they were asking me is, okay, like how do you move ahead in your career when you're there, right? You're not worried about the CCNA anymore, you're not worried about the A+. You actually are in the career, but you're looking for the next steps. And so one of the things I told this person was like, well, especially if you've been doing 16 years, one of the things you really need to think about is going into management. Right? Again, as our careers progress, right? When we're young, we want to be elbow deep into everything. We want to be elbow deep into the server or elbow deep into the code, right? That's where the real work is. And then as you go along, you realize, swapping RAM chips is actually boring as snot, to be frank with you. And so you go a little bit higher up the food chain, a little bit higher up the food chain, a little bit higher up the food chain. And then at a certain point, like I say, you get to management. And the nice thing was when you get to management, you're no longer doing the physical work yourself. You're doing the overall plans for how the organization is going to be running, the overall plans for figuring out maintenance contracts and service agreements and all that kind of stuff. And so the thing is, with that, you make more money, you get more benefits, you're not being woken up at midnight or whatever else. And so that's just again, it's how you progress. When you're 20 years old, the idea of being a manager might seem horrifying, but believe me, when you're 40 years old and you're like, what? I can go home at 5 o'clock at night and not have to show up to the office until 8 o'clock in the morning? That sounds lovely. And the curious thing is, as I was talking to this person about it, he looked at me and was like, yeah, Eli, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. But I just don't want to be like those people. And it's very curious, and it's one of the big issues that I see right now, again, with this whole stratifying of society and how, again, we don't teach people math. Like there's this whole thing with, the 99% versus the 1%. There's not, 1% means 1 out of 100. I don't think people understand how the 1% actually work. But anyways, right? Like there's this idea that owners and managers and supervisors, they're just mean, god-awful, horrible people. And the good, righteous people are the ones that actually screw in those teeny tiny screws. Yay! We're going to get more jobs in the United States to screw in teeny tiny screws, because that's going to make our society better. Anyways. Topical joke. But the curious thing, as I was literally sitting there talking to the person, and again, like I was arguing with them because they were talking about, should I go off, and get a higher level degree? And so get a master's degree in information technology or something like that. And basically, as I was talking to them, I was like, look, you can get a higher level degree. One, I would argue, don't get an information technology. Get, again, a computer science degree, a higher level hard degree. If you're going to go for a degree, go for the hardest degree you can possibly go for. And again, computer or information technology is just crap degrees. I mean, information technology degrees are degrees that universities came up with in order to pay for the dean's new house. The dean was like, wow, I need a new house. What are we going to do? It's like, hey, let's come up with a really crappy college program that people think is going to be valuable and then sell the crap out of that. Almost like a cybersecurity degree, right? And that's what they do. So again, they're pretty garbage. I mean, even if you don't know anything about IT, they're not the greatest thing in the world. And if you have 16 years of IT experience, like what the hell's the point? You have 16 years experience. I highly doubt you're going to be learning a lot from an information technology degree. Again, unless you go to MIT. Don't get me wrong. Again, with all of this stuff, there's caveats. If you're going to an IT master's degree at Stanford or MIT, something like that, fine, go do it. If you're going to go for an IT degree at, I don't know, your local state school, probably not going to be worth your time. Again, I think about that with how bad schools are. So here, I went to a meetup recently and I was told I should talk to the head of the NC State or University of North Carolina, Asheville computer science program. And this is the real world. This is the real world of how you get screwed in the real world. That's not being solved by anything currently going on with the current administration. Anyway, so they have a computer science program. And so I was told, hey, you should talk to the head of the computer science program. So I went over and I talked to the head of the computer science program and I'm like, you know, again, with all this AI stuff going on right now, I'm just curious, in your computer science program, how are you dealing with artificial intelligence? Literally was told point blank, oh, we dissuade our students from doing anything with it for the first 2 years. Computer science program in 2025, they're dissuading their students from even touching AI for the first 2 years. This isn't even like the history program or the philosophy program or whatever. The computer science program is dissuading their students from using AI. Anyways, you think that's bad. And it's like, well, but Eli. And again, I get it. I can do devil's advocate all day long. I get why you theoretically, God, it's painful, but I guess you can argue. That. Then I go and I start talking to students. So again, I'm at this meetup and there's a whole bunch of the students there, bright-eyed, bushy tails, do not know how badly they're getting screwed up the hoo-ha by these jackasses. Anyways, so I'm sitting there talking. I'm like, yeah, so what's the computer science program like? And they're kind of talking about it. It's like, that's weird. And then it gets to tests, and then they get to their testing. And they say, yeah, well, one of the things we don't like about it is when we do our tests, we actually have to hand write out the code. This is 2025. This is 2025 at a computer science program. University of North Carolina, Asheville. When they take a test and they're asked, like, how would you do a loop or an if-else statement or whatever, right? This is not being done on their computer with an ID or something like that. This is not, they literally use a pen and paper to write out the code so that the instructor can grade it in 2025. Riddle me this, riddle me that. If the administration puts 145% tariffs on Chinese goods, so that we can't buy Chinese products anymore, with the idea that we're going to build up our own internal industry, and yet our own internal education system, even in something like a computer science degree program, is, fuck me, 20 years behind. How's that gonna make anything better? Again, a lot of people don't understand. When I start screaming about the senile old loser, right? The senile old loser that's going to drive the United States into the ground because he doesn't have enough of his brain left to grasp what he's doing, and all the GOP sycophants can't get off their damn knees to be men. Again, I think that's one of the reasons why the GOP is so worried about the trans folks. Because they know they're not men. They know they're not men, but they don't want to be girls, so therefore they got to scream at the trans folks. No, you're just garbage. You're just not doing your damn jobs. Get off your knees and do your damn jobs. Again, there's globalization versus anti-globalization. Those are actual arguments. This horse crap where we're told things change because the senile old loser thought folks were getting a little bit yippy. Anyways. So one of the things, right, I was talking to this person about, you've already got 16 years experience, blase, blase, blase. So you do not want to go to University of North Carolina, Asheville for your degree program. Stay the fuck away from it, right? Again, that's what I can do. I don't have sponsors. I can call out horrible, evil people for the horrible, evil crap that they do. I wonder something. How much debt do these students go into for a degree program that hasn't been updated in, 15 plus years? Anyway, so don't go to University of North Carolina, Asheville for your technology degree unless you want absolute misery out of your life. So it's like, look, if you're gonna go for a college degree program, don't go for IT, go for computer science at a real university that's not gonna completely dork you. go up the tech route. So that's one of the things you can do, right? You can say, I want to be hyper tech. I want to do hyper tech things. And so you're really going to get into the science of doing technology, right? Or the other thing that I tell people is, like, you can go the other route that I argue for a lot of folks is get your MBA or your Juris Doctor. Again, I would argue there's going to be more innovations in the realm of legal things that go on in the technology world over the next couple of decades rather in the technology itself. The technology itself has basically plateaued. The legal issues around the technology, that's blue skies. There's a lot of interesting issues out there that you can go after. Or basically the MBA. Again, one of the things I talked about before is a lot of the higher level stuff that needs to be done now, again, in the technology world, is you need specialists. You need people who understand their industry, and then you add technical skills to them. Again, I talked about this with a CIO, CTO I knew about 10, again, this was about 10 years ago, and accounting firms, a long time ago, accounting firms decided to basically become managed service providers too. They already have deep relationships with small, medium, and large businesses. They're already providing services. They're already doing that kind of stuff. And so basically they were looking just for value add-ons. And they're like, what if we start fixing their servers and things too, doing business intelligence and that kind of stuff too. And so they added that on. The curious thing is, I talked to one of my buddies again years ago, and they had stopped hiring geeks for those positions. And literally what he said is, it's easier to teach an MBA how to do SQL than it is to teach a geek what an MBA knows. Right? There's business to business. There's actual business to business. Why business development is important, and why you should see Steve Newman in a week or so, right? So anyway, so I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this person, and it's like, again, I would probably argue, listening to everything that you're talking about, is go for the MBA. That's actually going to get you somewhere. And again, he comes back and he's like, man. I've looked at going up the ladder, but man, I don't want to be one of those people. Right? And again, I think this is one of the horrible things you see in the modern world, where people literally, they prevent themselves from getting ahead because they perceive that those people are somehow horribly different. My people are pure and righteous and good. Those people are the other. And the issue is, in a hierarchical, capitalistic society, basically what you're saying is that you're going to kneecap yourself because you believe being kneecapped is somehow more pure and righteous. One of the things I've talked about a lot, and it sounds horrible or whatever, is that whole thing about the N-word. And again, one of my concerns, again, I talk about social stuff a lot, again, because with Silicon Dojo, it is all social. If you're like, why are you talking about social and politics? Again, authorityless, gatekeeperless, free to end user, hands-on technology education that empowers you to do whatever it is that you want to do. That is a political movement, whether or not you realize it. But one of the things I've talked about before, right, especially when I deal with diverse people, and you think about the N-word, right, the N-word. And one of the things I've argued for a long time is there's not that much power in me calling you the N-word, right? Now, in mass and groups, it gets really brutal and really fast, but just go with me here, right? If other people call you the N-word, if other people denigrate you, you can rise above that. You can prove that that is not you. You can prove that they don't understand how significant you are, and you can rise and seize the day. You can. I mean, it doesn't always happen. I'm not trying to make it sound like it's easier than it is, but right, whatever. Here's the thing. The moment I convince you to start calling you the N-word, I've won. Right? Because the moment that you say that you are the N-word, game is over. Because I tell you that you're subhuman, you can say, fuck you, I'm as good or better than you. The moment you say that you are subhuman, game's over. Game's over. Again, that's one of the things I talk about with, you don't think about it with slavery. There's a science to slavery. things we don't get to talk about anymore. I mean, again, like you think about, right? It was a slave trade, right? Just a tremendous amount of economic activity went on around slaves. And so if I told you there's a science to advertising and marketing, you would go, okay, well that probably makes sense. You know, if I told you there was a science to farming and transportation, and all logistics and all that kind of stuff, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. If I told you there was a science to breeding cattle and chickens and that kind of stuff, you'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. If I said there was a science to enslaving human beings, you're like, well, I don't know about that, Eli. It's like, why? It was driving the equivalent of billions of dollars of economic activity back in the day. You don't think a few philosophers sat down and figured out how to do that crap better? And one of the ways you can do that crap better is making the enslaved person think that they should be enslaved. Hey, you don't have to worry about slaves running away if they think they're at the place they should be, right? And so that's one of the big things to be thinking about. Like when you're thinking about going up, again, into management, owning a company, you know, being a boss and all that kind of stuff, what is your psychological story? What story are you holding about those people? Because again, if you do not sit down and have a cup of coffee or a beer or have a conversation with another human being and understand where they're coming from, then all you do is you put your ignorant, naive story on them, and then you start measuring them by your own bigotry. And the thing is, when you're doing that on the lesser people, when you measure, you know, the homeless people based off of your bigotry, oh, it really sucks for them. Probably isn't going to hurt you too much, let's be honest, right? When you measure people in Africa based off of your bigotry, I mean, it's not good, but it's also probably not going to affect you. When you start measuring your bosses, the company owners, the managers, the supervisors, the people above you based off of your bigotry, are you ever going to go up there? Are you ever going to rise to a higher position if you have already labeled those people as garbage? Right, again, I think about this. Again, like I say, half my family is dead from white despair or whatever the hell you want to call it. Mom's dead, stepfather's dead, aunt's dead, uncle's dead, other uncle's dead, friends dead, right? And again, one of the things I talk about in the disadvantaged classes, one of the words, again, I am all for free speech, but there should be limits on free speech. You can't say, scream out fire in a crowded theater. And by God, if you look at some kid in the eye and you said, what, you think you're better than us? I think you should get dragged in the middle of the damn town square and flogged until the flesh flays off your body. Right? Because how many people? Oh, what? You think you're better than us? No. I just don't want to live in fucking poverty anymore. I'm just saying their lives look pretty good and this life's pretty shitty. Why don't you come with me? We can all get our college degrees together and move up. Oh, I wouldn't want to be one of those types of people. But anyways, think about that. So anyways, I was talking to this person about it. And, I was discussing, I was like, I think about this with one of my college professors. So back when I was going to college in the 90s, I had a professor of mine, and he had grown up in the ghetto of Baltimore City, risen up, gotten his degree, went into the state police, got his PhD, was in the FBI. And then when he was in the FBI, he dealt with bad racism. Bad racism. Like racism to the point, he literally ended up having to testify in front of Congress because of the racist crap he had dealt with in the FBI. So anyways, sitting there, I was talking to him, and again, this was way back, decades ago at this point, thinking about what agencies I should work for or whatever else. And I was talking to him. I said, well, with the stories that you talk about with the FBI and how it's, racist and all that, I figure not the FBI, what other agency would be good to go to. And he looked at me and he said, no, you should apply for the FBI. And I was like, what? Because again, he just sat there and he talked about the issues that he had run into there. And he said, look, the FBI needs to exist. The FBI is going to continue to exist, at least for another couple weeks. The senile old loser destroys that too. Anyways, the FBI, right, we need some type of federal law enforcement, right? So it's always going to exist. And so basically one of the things to think about is that the employees, the people that run the FBI, again, have a tremendous level of discretion. Think about all the decisions that you make throughout the day, and then think about how those decisions are weighted. Whether when you walk by somebody, you say hello, whether you say something derisive to them, whether you don't notice them at all. Again, do you help somebody or do you punish somebody, right? There's all of these these places where you have discretion. Again, one of the biggest problems with the criminal justice system in the United States is literally how much discretion there is. You can have two people do the exact same action. One person can go to jail for 20 years. The other person gets off with a verbal warning. Like literally, that is how bad the discretion is in the United States. And so one of the things he said is like the only way the FBI will change is if better people are hired, right? The only way the FBI becomes less racist is if more employees that are hired are in fact less racist and think about things doing differently. The only way the institution changes is if the people that make up the institution change. Right? And that's one of the things to be thinking about in this modern world. Again, you see BLM, and one of the things that I'm most horrified with Black Lives Matter, and again, just the pure how bad our education system is if Black Lives Matter really wanted to change things, they would be pushing for more of their members to become police officers. Why would we become the enemy? Because think about it, it's the police officers that have a huge amount of discretion for when they interact with people out in the real world and deciding what to do in those particular circumstances, right? Do you take a couple of steps back and try to, again, de-escalate the situation, or do you pull your weapon and deal with the situation? Right? Those are decision points, right? So if BLM really wanted to improve things, they should be pushing as many young Black folks through programs that will get them into law enforcement as possible, so that there are more law enforcement officers with the same mentality, so that when things happen, they choose a different path, right? Again, that's one of the things to think about. Again, like it's interesting with, again, African Americans in the inner cities. Like, again, is it science? I don't know, but there's this whole discussion about how young African American males to white officers seem older than they are. And again, I've seen this, right? You deal with a 13-year-old young Black guy, and he seems like a 17-year-old, right? Right? There's something, I don't know what the fuck they put in the water in some of those neighborhoods, but Jesus Christ. And so that's the thing, right? If you're a police officer and you're going into an environment and you think you're dealing with a 13-year-old, if you put the story of 13-year-old onto this person that you're interacting with, how are you going to interact with that person? It's like, oh, okay, this is a 13-year-old. They might not fully understand what's going, blah, blah, blah. Whereas if you go into an environment and you put the story of a or 18-year-old onto this person, and then you add a few other, addendums to that story, epilogues to that story, because you're in the inner city, how are you going to deal with that person? Right? And so again, if you have more people that are used to the environment, used to these different cues and things, again, hopefully, maybe we would come out with better outcomes. And so that's one of the things to be thinking about. Again, like when you think about the leadership of your company, the best way to change the leadership of your company is to become the leadership of your company. right? Again, as you hear me talk about, you've heard me talk about, I ran my company, you know, I got the resumes in. It would be a 12-hour day. You want to come on? It would be a 12-hour day. I was tired, I was exhausted, everybody was treating me like a damn moron. I pick up a resume, and I swear to God, that last name, all it had is consonants. Didn't have a single vowel in it. And you know what happened? Thunk. I got 100 resumes to deal with. Last thing I want to deal with after a really long day is trying to figure out how to pronounce a name with 0 vowels in it, right? So again, you may hear that story like, that is horrible, that is god awful. I would never do that. A real boss would never do that, Eli. Great, become a boss. What? Wait a minute, no, but my story is that bosses are evil. Right? But that's the only way things will change. If you're saying leadership should be a little bit more flexible, then when you're in leadership, you should be a little bit more flexible. If you say leadership should change the different aspects and employees that they value, then when you get into a leadership position, you modify what you value as a leader. Right? But so many people, they have this idea in their head, no, I'm not going to be that. Again, and I was talking to the guy about it, and I was like, you know, I remember, again, I was getting my criminal justice degree. And again, this was long before BLM or anybody gave a damn about social justice or anything. This was back in the utopia of black people. Again, apparently black people just had wonderful lives before, you know, 2016. Everything in the United States was wonderful for everybody before 2016, and then it all went to hell for some reason. I don't know why. But anyways, right, I was doing my degree and learning this stuff and going and listening to God knows how many people. And it was interesting because that time, you know, I worked in the corporate world and worked around other things. And one of the interesting things that I saw was in the corporate world where African-American women refused to be promoted in the 90s. In the 90s, right? Again, we're told about diversification and all this kind of stuff. I remember walking into, again, that corporate job I had when I was flying all over the country, and we had our operations guy, right? So our operations guy, you know, went into his office one day, and he was just pissed. He was banging his head against the wall. I was like, what do? What's going on? It's like, I just don't understand her. I was like, what? And he had an assistant. He had this black woman assistant, African-American woman assistant. And I was like, what's the problem? I thought she was a good employee. And he was like, she's a great employee. And I was like, okay, what's the argument? And he's like, I'm trying to get her promoted. I'm trying to get her promoted. And I'm like, oh, I'm being the good white guy. I'm like, oh, what? The higher ups don't like that? He's like, no, I've got everything slotted. All she has to do is say yes. All she has to do is say yes. And she refuses to be promoted. Again, think about this. These are stories. These are the stories that somehow we don't never talk about. And it was interesting. And again, again, different places in the corporate world, I saw this, where again, African-American women were being offered the ability to be promoted, and they would say no, because that's not for them, right? And again, think about this. You get promoted, you make more money, you get more benefits, you're generally more solid in your position, right? That allows you to provide more benefits and everything to your kids so they can be in a better position. You're less likely to get called at midnight, the whole 9 yards. But there's so much of this is, no, I don't want to be one of those people. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this guy, and then he laughs. He actually laughs when I said that last story. And I was like, why are you laughing? And he said, well, the funny part is last week my boss came in and offered me a promotion. And I said no. And I said no. Because he doesn't want to be like those people. And the thing is, I sat there and I was talking to him. It's like, one of the things you have to understand, especially if you're not in management or whatever else, is that many times the reasons that you think your bosses and your owners and all that are so horrible is because you don't know the metrics that they're dealing with. You don't know the numbers that they're dealing with. You do not see that single pane of glass that they walk into every morning where they have to figure out how they're going to make those numbers equal out. Again, you sit there and you say, we need a rack of servers because our disaster recovery system isn't up to snuff. Again, the executives walk in and they're like, well, you need a rack of servers and they need toilet paper. And, oh, my salesperson did something stupid at the company happy hour a couple of weeks ago, so I need to hire a lawyer in order to deal with that. And oh, look, we're coming to the end of our lease for this particular facility, so I need to be in the middle of negotiations for the lease. And when you're negotiating a lease, you're not negotiating a lease for 1 year, you're negotiating a lease for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So they have all this stuff on their table. And so what to you seems arbitrary, what to you might even seem cruel and unnecessary, may have just a lot of numbers that go behind it, and you simply don't understand what those numbers are. And the boss may not want to discuss it because, again, one of the things with business is there's 20 ways to skin a cat. Why did you make one decision over another decision? Is because when they looked at it using their lived experience, using their discretion, they looked at a couple of different possibilities and they said, in my gut, I believe this one to be true. But they also know that, well, that one might have worked out and that one might have worked out, and the decision that they made might fail miserably. And guess what? They've been working 12 hours a day and they're really incredibly stressed and they have no idea whether they made the right decision. And the last fucking thing in the entire goddamn world that they want to do is have an argument with a stupid motherfucker that has no idea what they're talking about. So maybe the reason that they're a little short and angry and they come off in a way that you don't necessarily agree with is because they're tired, right? Anyways, and so one of the things talking with them, and it's like, and to think about that, where if you take the road to the management position, you then start to understand how your business actually operates. Again, is there any more sinister or sniveling human being in the world than somebody that sneers at their superiors at the exact same time they have no idea what their superiors are trying to deal with? Right? So if you really think they're bad and horrible and god-awful and nasty and the rest of it, then go into their ranks to find out what's going on. And then if you're so smart and if you're so good, then once you're there, you can come up with the solutions to find a better, more equitable way of dealing with things, right? But I think that's one of the things that a lot of like technology professionals really don't think about, like with that whole idea of going into the management, is there's this idea of we are the real people in this company and those are the other. Again, it's amazing when you see technology people just sneer at every other person in the company, right? The lawyers and the accountants and the HR folks. Again, I've talked about that before. One of the big problems with hiring people in the tech world is because technical team leads won't give HR people an hour of their time so that the HR people can fully understand what the hell the technical team actually needs so that they can hire the right person. Right? How many times have you probably seen a technical lead sneer at the fact that they have to go talk with HR about basically being able to hire an employee for their team and why they have to waste their time dealing with this paperwork garbage? And all the HR person is trying to do is trying to figure out who the hell you need to actually be able to hire one of you, right? But there's this idea, like we are the real value in the company and everybody else, including the damn owner, is garbage, trash, right? So even when a promotion is offered into management, the answer is no. And you want to know what the punchline of all this is? You want to know the punchline of this entire story? Drum roll, please. That's right. The guy I was talking to was a black guy. 2025. 2025. You're being offered a promotion. Take the damn promotion. Just take the goddamn promotion. Oh, nothing that I do, no work that I do, no work that the NAACP does, no screaming by Al Sharpton will ever fix things. If a qualified African-American man with a bachelor's degree and 16 years experience, when asked if he'll take a promotion into management, still says no. What happens when the world stops calling you the N-word, but you still call yourself it? That's the question. And so the thing to be thinking about with all of this is as you go in your career, there's going to be a point that you're going to be offered the ability to jump into management. And a couple of things to think about with this. Again, one, stop thinking of them as the other. They are making decisions you do not understand. Just like the secretary complains because there's a storage quota on the system and she has no idea how a SAN functions, it's the same deal. You don't understand why you're not getting a new SAN because you don't understand how the business operates. Again, one of the most fascinating things, again, I've been talking about how the senile old loser is destroying our economy. One of the fascinating things being here in Asheville is we have so many remote workers. And again, I've been used to being around technology professionals that are either managers or founders or whatever else. So they do technology, but their work, I suppose, the tasks that they complete during the day are very much aligned with revenue, very much aligned with revenue. Or coming up with other numbers that are as good as revenue. Who needs revenue when you've got bounce rate? Anyways, right? One of the curious things, again, talking with folks here about whatever the hell's going to go on with the economy, is asking folks, and again, I'll just sit there, going to meetups or going to other things, and I'll be like, yeah, okay, like your tech business or whatever. So how does your business actually get revenue? Like what is the value proposition for your particular business? And the fascinating, and it didn't even hit me until again, this whole economic disaster started, how many of these high-level, high-quality technology professionals have no idea how their company makes money. Like, yeah, I don't actually know. It'll be like, what's the contract cost for your company? What's the monthly purchase price for services? Whatever. I don't know. What's like the profit? What's the net on that? I don't know. How long? What's the overall, what is the lifetime expected value of your customers and clients? Client acquisition? I don't know. Right, all these people that are very comfortable getting their paychecks from all over the world and paying mortgages in a place that now has, the cost of houses are the same as metropolitan areas, and they have no idea. They have no idea how the businesses that pay them actually operate. And so a big thing to be thinking about there is that when you say, no, you don't want to go into management, again, is it that you don't want to go into management, or is that you have bigotry, you have prejudice, you have stories that you're superimposing upon these people and upon these positions that may not be nearly as correct as you imagine they are? The other thing to be thinking about too is by going into management, again, you're going to be making more money and you are going to be having generally a more secure position in the company. Now, again, when layoffs happen, again, layoffs aren't personal, entire departments go away. But generally, again, especially if you're in a smaller company, so like the FANG companies, they've gotten a little stupid with their management, but most companies are pretty reasonable with their managers. So if you get to that position, you're generally more secure. Again, if you have a team that needs to be downsized, let's say you have a 10-person team with a manager, that team needs to be downsized. The first person to go most likely is not going to be the manager unless they suck. The first person to go is the worst team member, and then the next. So you're going to go from a team of 10 to a team of 9 to a team of 8 to a team of 6 to a team of 5. You're going to keep your job. If you go from team of 5 down to team of 4, you're probably going to lose your job at that point. But a lot of people have to get fired before you end up getting fired. That's one of the things with management, right? So you're bringing in more money, you're getting more benefits, you're probably going to be more secure within the company. Again, you got to be careful with the company and all that kind of stuff. And that's also what you can provide to the next generation. Again, talking to this person, again, he wants to have kids. He wants to have kids. Here's the deal. When your kids go to college, or whatever the drop-in replacement for college is in 18 years, do you want to be sitting there scrimping and trying to figure out how you can possibly pay for them to go to school what they need? Or do you just, as they say in Baltimore, want to stroke a check? Right? If your kid is 9 years old and is fucking amazing in math or biology or whatever else, right? And there's some kind of summer camp that costs the equivalent of $5,000, which is a real thing. Do you want to be looking at your kid going, oh, wow, I wish I could send you to that. I really want you to know how much I wish I could send you to that. Is that what you want to tell your kid? Or do you want to just stroke a check and your kid goes? And where do you think that's going to put your kid in 18 years? So that's one of the first things to be thinking about with management. The other thing, and that's why one of the things I was talking with this guy about going for the MBA, is if you get an MBA, and if you go for an MBA as a technology professional, do not get an IT-centric MBA. Stop. No, that's for lazy people. That's for lazy people, right? Even Roxy knows that's for lazy people. If you're going to get an MBA and get a specialization in finance. Accounting. Again, something hard as you can possibly go for. The reason is if you go for an MBA and you get it with a specialization in IT, if you have 10, 16 years experience in IT, I don't imagine they're going to teach you much of anything. Again, a database is a database. Just because they're teaching you about databases in MBA school doesn't mean a database is any different. All right, so go for finance, go for something else. And one of the things I was talking to this guy about is because, technology is changing. Again, we had the conversation with Martin Lehner yesterday, and one of the things he talked about is like we are always going to have technology. What's that technology going to look like? Who the hell knows? Again, technology 100 and some odd years ago was locomotives. Technology, 50 years ago was cars. Technology 30 years ago was VCRs. Technology 20 years ago was MCSEs, right? Servers. Technology now is AI. Technology in 10 years, again, what is going to be the valuable technology in 10 years? Will there be valuable technology you can make a crap ton of money off of? Yes. Do we know what that looks like? Absolutely not. So one of the things, if you go for your MBA, that actually puts you into a position to be able to deal with other technology companies, right? So again, this world of IT goes away. If you've got your MBA and you have experience in technology, right? You got Lucky Palmer. Lucky Palmer is about putting economic mass in the air. Oh, we are truly in the worst timeline. So if you've seen this, Anduril, anyways, look at it. They now have anime. They have anime cartoons about how America has got to kill more brown people. We are going to kill so many brown people at a total cost of death that is just going to surpass anything we have previously seen. Right? But yeah, that's what they're doing. They're literally building low-cost cruise missiles. Oh, Jesus. We are now in the world where Costco for cruise missiles is a thing. You know what our startup does? Yeah, think about like Costco for cruise missiles. No, that's real. Maybe IKEA for cruise missiles. I don't know. You figure out what makes you less queasy. But think about this, right? If you've been in the tech world for 16 years, you get your MBA, you get it in a real specialty, you could go and work for that company as a manager. Again, systems are basically systems, right? Again, the next thing that comes out, whatever, you come out with that MBA, you can go and you can work on other technology projects. Again, when I was in Miami, it was really interesting. Again, one of the things I like about Miami, there's real people, real technology people in Miami. I'm sitting there at one of these meetups talking to the guy, he's the CEO of a company, and basically what they're looking at is how to deploy solar-powered car chargers. So again, just basically like gas stations, essentially using solar power. The issue is, he was talking about it, Biden was doing a miserable job of deploying green infrastructure. Again, lots of buzzwords about green infrastructure, not nearly as many high-powered electrical cables. It's like, hey, maybe a few less words and a few more feet of high-powered electrical cable. And so anyways, right, there's this whole thing about green in America. Or we had a whole thing about green in America. I don't know what we're doing now. Anyways, so the idea was, okay, well, how do you, since we're not going to get the high-powered, high-voltage cable out to the middle of nowhere, Kansas, Oklahoma, Colorado, or whatever, how can you recharge cars? And so basically what he was looking at, what they were actually deploying is solar panels that then trickle charge big batteries that allow you to fast charge electric cars, right? So basically you have these big batteries, they slowly charge from solar, and they can also slowly charge from the grid. You pull in your Cybertruck with the 240 voltage or whatever, you plug it in, it then drains from the battery. It's not necessarily pulling directly from the solar or whatever else. And basically they're designing those types of systems. The idea is to, create those kinds of stations. The idea, they're gonna like build 5 to 10 of these. Those essentially then get sold as blocks. It's actually kind of an interesting business model. So essentially almost like autonomous gas stations, not quite autonomous gas stations, but anyways, sell those to investors, and that's the new Sheets of 2030s or whatever else. But think about this, right? If you did get a degree in IT, if you go out there and get a master's degree in IT, are you valuable to them? Are you valuable to them? Could you do that kind of project? Whereas again, right, you get your MBA, you understand the finance component, you understand the tax component, you understand regulatory components, right? Then you hire people to put the solar panel in or whatever else when you are able to do the higher level management thing. Again, being able to work with lawyers, being able to work with regulators, being able to work with the accountants, being able to work with all of the other folks to actually make the overall project viable. And that's one of the things that an MBA is going to get you, where again, a piece of garbage IT master's degree just simply, great, you're going to have a piece of paper. You're going to spend 2 years to get a piece of paper on stuff that you already knew, right? And so that's one of the things like I argue about for the MBA. And again, Juris Doctor and that type of thing. And so that's a thing to be considering and to think about it. Like as you go in your career, I mean, if you're 20, again, you have your idea what you want to do in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, 50s. Warning, Will Robinson, you will turn 50 one day, and it's gonna be closer than you think. Do you realize that? I'm about to turn 49. I am so close to 49. When I started doing videos, I was 33. I was 33 when I started on YouTube, 16 plus years ago. I'm about to be 49. And think about that. What kind of job do you want at 50? What kind of job do you really want at 50? Right? Is elbow deep in code or circuit boards what you want to be doing? Or it'd be really nice to be looking at some spreadsheets and telling the other peons what they need to be doing, right? Wouldn't it be more interesting actually pushing a company forward in order to bring your visions into reality versus simply being basically a completely and utterly replaceable cog that brings other people's visions into reality? That's the difference between management and the normal workers. Is that where you want to be? So anyways, there you go. There are some thoughts for today on, as an IT person, should you go into management and what degree should you get? Get the MBA or the Juris Doctor. I really like the Juris Doctor too. And yes, look at going for that management. And then think about that, right? Think about all those little snot-nosed brats. Think about all the snot-nosed brats you deal with. Not you. You listen to me. You listen to me, so you're smart. You're not a snot-nosed brat. Look at all those little snot-nosed, whiny little brats that you hang around. That all they do is they complain about the boss. They complain about the boss. They complain about the manager. They complain about the owner. They scream about the 99% versus the 1%. how many of them would actually take the promotion if they were offered? If your manager is so stupid, what does it mean if you're offered a promotion into management and you don't take it? Anyways, some thoughts from the real world. So with that, I have some more classes to record today for Introduction to Programming. Hopefully, I don't know, maybe that series will be published next week. Again, we have Steve Newman. He's coming onto the show next week to talk about business development. Probably the week after that, we're having the founder of something called Pre.dev come on the show, talk about using AI for coding and that type of thing. And I'll be getting more and more folks coming on the show. Also, I will be going up to Web Summit Vancouver. So it used to be called Collision Conference. It's now Web Summit Vancouver. I will be going up there at the end of May. May, right? Yep, May. So if you're going to that, I don't know, maybe I'll see you there. And yeah, that's all I gotta say. See y'all later.